Deep Dive, exploring the investment opportunities in Pakistan.
Our guest, Mr. Ayaz Dawood, is the CEO of BRR Guardian Modaraba and Crescent Standard Modaraba. He has served in the board of directors of First Dawood Investment Bank, Japan Power Generation Systems Ltd, and Dawood Takaful. He has a wealth of experience in Pakistan's financial sector. He has an MBA degree in money and financial markets from the Columbia Business School. In our discussion today, we provide an overview of the Pakistan Stock Exchange, its long-term returns relative to the real estate market, and as well our guest response to criticism that has been leveled against the exchange in the past. Ayaz talks about the securities brokerage business in Pakistan and how a well-managed broker differentiates itself from the competition. Last but not least, we review the Roshan digital account in detail, discussing its benefits, tax implications, and how funds can be repatriated by overseas investors. Enjoy the show. Listen, welcome Ayaz. It's a pleasure to have you on our show today. I am really looking forward to discussing all things PSX, but then as well as the securities brokerage business in Pakistan. And I'm hoping if we can start off with a high-level question for the audience. And I'm hoping if you can provide us with a brief overview of the Pakistan Stock Exchange.
Well, the PSX is actually a very old organization. It is older than Pakistan. And we have currently approximately 530 listed companies. At the peak, there was over 700. So the government has actually restricted and made it harder to list. And that's why there have been only 3 to 5 listings a year for the last 5 years, and more delistings than listings. So the quality of the companies that are listed has improved dramatically. The second thing that has happened this year, again, is the volume is back. We have over 500 million shares traded on average since July 1st. And the market cap has gone up to 6.5 trillion rupees. It is actually easy to get in and out of majority of scripts. At least 20 scripts trade 5 million plus shares a day. So it's a liquid market. Of course, there are certain illiquid shares like Colgate or Unilever Foods, the multinationals where majority is owned by them. Those don't trade so much, but they do trade. And if you're willing to pay 5% higher, you'll always get the shares.
So talk to me a little bit about that, because there were some interesting points you said. You said number of companies listed has gone down, and then as well, trading activity has picked up recently. What's behind these two trends?
One thing is, there are two actual interesting trends that have happened. One thing is, this government has made it easier to open brokerage accounts, and they have allowed, reduced the restrictions on the brokers on how much value and volume they can trade against their capital. So that has allowed more volume to come in. The second thing is the government has come up with this Roshan account. This Roshan account is a brilliant scheme, because anyone from outside of Pakistan, never having to go to a bank, can actually open a bank account with 6 different banks. And there is a drop-down menu when you open an account, where you can open an account with a brokerage firm, anyone which has online trading you can use. And you can even open an account with an asset management company. So since this is opened, I think it took 78 days for the first 100 million to come in, and it took like 38 days for the second 100 million to come in. So $200 million has come in. Half of it goes into government securities, which are giving 5 to 7%. But the other half is going into these stock market and bond market and all, and adding liquidity to the company.
And in fact, the one piece I'll mention is you said 5 to 7%. And I want to stress to the audience that's US dollar denominated returns.
Yes, not rupees.
Right, not rupees. And that is sizable. And so you've mentioned that. How about the trend with listing of companies going down? What sort of prompted that to happen?
Again, it's over-regulation. So the regulation became so hard that it wasn't worth it for companies to list. And the other thing is the valuation wasn't good enough. If you want to list, you're actually selling some of your company, and you want a good valuation. So with the market going up and the trading value and volume going up, people are looking at listings. This year, before June 30th, we expect another 6 listings. 4 listings have already come. The first one that came this year after July 1st was organic meat, which exports meat to China as well as Saudi and all. That stock has gone up 50% since it was listed. And the largest listing this year has been Aga Steel. Aga Steel is up about 20% since it was listed. And I mean, right now with the infrastructure spending and the economy growing, that's a good sector to be in. The other thing I want to mention is the stock market is actually providing its proper function. There are a lot of rights issues being issued in Pakistan. So far this year, I think 11 rights have been done, but the most important part of that is foreign multinationals are issuing rights. Shell Pakistan has announced a huge 6 billion rupee rights issue. Hino Park did a rights issue. Gillette just announced a rights issue. And none of these companies have done a rights issue in the last decade. The reason that's a big thing is that means the foreigners, instead of just giving a guarantee and borrowing money, they're willing to put equity into Pakistan. And this is actual equity. It's not a stock market equity that goes in and out. When you're putting it in as a sponsor, it's going to stay. So that's a sign of confidence in the government and the country.
No, that's excellent. Rights issue, I'll tell you, not a lot of our audience may be financially inclined. And so could you just very simply introduce to us the concept of rights issue and how it works?
Actually, Pakistan's system is much fairer than the American or the Canadian system. It's actually based on the British system. So if, for example, Gillette has announced 100% rights issue, same with Shell, that means if you have 100 shares, you're allowed to buy another 100 shares at the rights price, which is normally deeply discounted to the market price. And generally, the rights trade at a discount. So what you do is you sell your shares, buy the rights, you make a spread, and you have the same exact shareholding.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. When the conversation of PSX comes up, most people measure the performance of PSX by looking at the performance of the KSE 100. What is the KSE 100? Why is it important?
Actually, it's not a very good indicator because it actually has 100 shares, but it's not the 100 largest shares. The way it's done is each sector has one share, and then it becomes the market cap. So there are a lot of stocks which are illiquid, which are in this index. And this index actually should be modernized by making it market weight.
I was just going to ask you, because your connection went there slightly, the index name that you mentioned, what was the name of the index name?
That is the PSX 30.
Okay, excellent.
And there is another index which is also very liquid, which is called the KMI 30, which is 30 Islamic stocks. And it's the Karachi Mizan Index, or PMI now, Pakistan Mizan Index.
Okay, all right, excellent. Thank you for that. When we talk about investing in Pakistan, more often than not, the conversation of real estate comes up as an asset class. And I'm just going to ask you, can you perhaps walk our viewers through the performance of Pakistan equities over the long term relative to something like returns in the real estate market?
There's two things. I mean, real estate has always performed because one is the easiest place to put black money. The reason was the official transfer price has normally been 10 to 25% of the actual value of the transaction. Now the government is tightening up and is increasing the valuation tables. So therefore, that is, as an avenue, is going down as an investment avenue. While stocks have become more liquid. Before, they weren't so liquid, so people would get stuck in shares. Now you can get in and out with 500 million traded. It's easy to get in and out, very liquid. The other good thing that the government has done is if you buy property, they ask you where you got your money from. So people are afraid to put money into properties. On the other hand, when you have a stock market trading account, even with Roshan, you don't have to file any tax returns. It's automatically your capital gains is deducted at source. Your dividend tax is also deducted at source, and you get the receipt, one annual statement.
You spoke about some of these government policies, and we're finding more and more the government's trying to focus on bringing business transactions within the formal economy. How do you anticipate these changes will impact equity market returns moving forward?
Well, the best thing that has happened is the government is actually serious about reducing smuggling. And there are three policies that they've done which have actually shown dramatic results. One is the mobile phones. You cannot now use a phone from outside with the Pakistan SIM unless it's registered. So you would see our legal phone imports valuations have gone up 80%. So that was all being smuggled. The second thing is, as you know, with the corona lockdown, you'd expect petrol and diesel sales to go down dramatically. We've actually had the highest sales ever because, again, smuggling from Iran has been reduced dramatically. And they've identified the 300 illegal petrol stations that they're going to shut down. Wow. So once that happens, again, legal sales will go up, then shares of Shell, PSO, all these OMCs would go up. And the third big issue that they've done is there is a huge issue of smuggling of tires. No truck or bus tire is actually manufactured in Pakistan right now. So two groups, one is Daewoo and the other one is Service Industries. They've done a joint venture with the Chinese, and they're going to be setting up two tire plants in Pakistan. So if you actually stop smuggling, one, tax revenue goes up. Like all the phones that were smuggled, there was no tax paid, duty paid. Now they all have to be duty and tax paid. The second thing that happens is people have started assembling phones in Pakistan. Samsung is even looking at setting up an assembly. So if you regularize it, you will get one, jobs in the formal sector, plus you will have, of course, tax revenue.
And thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense. I feel equities have been flying under the radar in Pakistan, perhaps unfairly, but you've laid out a pretty strong bull case for this investment moving forward. At the same time, Ayaz, the Pakistan Stock Exchange has received criticism in the past. And so specifically what I mean is, and a caveat here being, listen, criticism is not necessarily grounded in fact. So let me just put that as a caveat. The first one is that the market is controlled by a few big players, and these few big players have the ability to manipulate individual stock prices at their whim. What are your thoughts on that?
That is correct. Of course, no broker or anyone can manipulate the big stocks like the OGDCs and the Habib banks and the MCB banks. So they're too big to manipulate. But of course, small stocks can be manipulated. And when individuals invest in small loss-making stocks and they're going up, there's something wrong. But unfortunately, individuals fall for these traps, and always will. It happens in America, it happens in Canada, it'll happen everywhere in the world. So you have to be careful. Now, I'll just give you one other sector which has performed dramatically well. I have been on the board of Systems Limited for 9 years. Systems did an IPO. Systems is a BPO from mainly America, the business. And thanks to COVID again, and thanks to Lahore not shutting down when Bangalore and Karachi even shut down, the amount of business that is coming to Pakistan, Walmart has started business with Pakistan, that this one share has gone up from 80 rupees to 400 rupees. But it is actually a dividend paying stock. It has actually showed growth of about 30% a year for the last 10 years in dollar terms. So there are a lot of stocks which should be valued at American multiples because they're actually American shares, and they're being valued at Pakistan multiples. So when they re-rate, the valuation goes up dramatically.
Well, I'm going to drill down on Systems Limited with you a little bit later on in the conversation, because I know you have some unique insights when it comes to that company. But going back to that piece about the market being controlled by a few players, so your advice really is follow the good quality companies, right? Follow the fundamentals.
I would say that, and dividend-paying stocks. If they are actually cash rich and they're paying dividends, or they're doing rights issues and expanding, or the multinational, there's so many different sectors. The manipulation can only take place on illiquid small cap stocks, because that's where the manipulation happens. It cannot happen on a good, well-run, well-grouped companies.
Okay. And that's fair. Criticism number 2 is perhaps a lack of liquidity in the Pakistan Stock Exchange. And again, what I mean by that is, barring the top 15, top 20 large companies, the remaining companies, people say, have limited number of shares that trade on a daily basis. And why that's important to me as an investor is, if I'm invested in one of these companies, I'm looking to sell. One, will there be enough people looking to buy these shares? And if they are, can I get a fair price for these shares?
That's where I will disagree with your criticism. Say there are 530 listed companies, 200 of them you will never look at, and they're illiquid. They're the textile companies and all, where 97% is owned by the sponsors, or 90%. So you got to get rid of those. But the top 100 companies, they trade over 1 million a day. So, I mean, you can go in and out without a problem. The spread on a lot of these companies is only 1 paisa between the bid and ask. You will be surprised. I mean, our brokerage house today traded over 20 million shares. So that is more than 2% of the market. The fact is, people can get in and out. That's why you are able to trade that many shares.
Okay, great insights there. And really, these questions lead me to my next natural question, which is, what type of regulations exist to protect the equity investor in Pakistan?
Actually, the government has a very good regulations. Of course, I mean, people will not lose money with the broker anymore because of the segregation of assets. Um, you actually are very well protected. Of course, companies can go bankrupt. Of course, companies can rise out of the ashes also. So a lot of people like buying 1 rupee shares because they say, how much lower can it go? But it'll either go to 0 or it'll go to 5, you know. You can speculate, but that's not what I advise investors to invest in. Investors should invest in good companies. Like today, over 20 stocks traded more than 10 million shares. The largest traded stock today was Unity, which traded 46 million shares, and then TRG, which traded 37 million shares. So, I mean, that level of trading, you can get in and out in 1 second, and there's no issue of price. When there are 20 companies trading over 10 million, and I'm sure there are probably 100 companies that traded over a million.
Listen, so far we've been asking you quite direct questions and you've been very forthright with your responses. So I appreciate that. I'm going to change gears slightly. You're part of the leadership team of a major securities brokerage house in Pakistan. And so my question to you really would be, can you very simply explain the securities brokerage business to our audience, and how does this business make money?
Okay. In Pakistan, actually, currently there is a minimum brokerage commission that can be charged. So everyone charges that commission. So you cannot compete on commission. That is currently illegal. So you have to compete on service. And now, as an overseas Pakistani, you are only, if you go through a Roshan account, which is the right way to do it, and not go through Sakra, which is the old way to do it, which would take you 3 to 6 months to open an account and have trouble. What happens with this Roshan account is you trade online. So ideally, you don't have to talk to anyone. You don't have to know even if there's a trader there or not. It's all automatic. And the settlement is also done automatically by CDC for you. So the shares are given and the payment is given. So you are taking no risk because your shares are in your account always, not with the broker, but with CDC as an independent custodian. The second part of that is you're trading online. So you know what you're buying and you're selling. So again, it's completely safe. Of course, the broker has to do his own due diligence on your know your customer, which everyone's required. The bank also has to do that due diligence to open the account. But after that, it is purely safe. Now, of course, if you have a broker, he can WhatsApp you and give you tips and all that and recommendations, and you can, of course, ask whatever you want, and they should actually provide you the service.
That's good. Now, apart from the Roshan digital account, because we will be speaking about that again in a little bit more detail, what other changes or challenges have existed in this industry in recent times?
Well, the brokerage industry, what happened was there were 3 stock markets in Pakistan. There was the Lahore Exchange, the Islamabad Exchange, and the Karachi Stock Exchange. Where Karachi did 95% of the business, the other 2 were actually not doing much. Then they actually merged the 3 exchanges. So you ended up with approximately 600 brokers from 200. Karachi always had 200. After the merger, what's been happening is a lot of these brokers, because of the compliance issues, because of the capital requirement has been increased, a lot of them are shrinking. And today, the latest figure I have is that 284 brokers. And in my view, it will come down again back to approximately 200 active brokers. But market is running and all that. Before last year, there was very little volume. When there's a volume of 100 million, guess what? You can't get in and out on any stock, and no broker can make money. But when the volume is 500 million, every broker is making money. And of course, you can get in and out on any stock. So the liquidity comes from the volume. If you know there's volume in the stock, you know you can get in and out, you're going to buy that stock. On the other hand, when there's no volume and it's an illiquid market, I'm sorry, you can get stuck. And since July 1st now, Pakistan, because they've changed all these regulations and made it easier, there actually is good volume and you can get in and out of any stock.
Now, yours is a securities brokerage business that's publicly listed.
Yes.
So if I'm an investor looking to buy shares in a publicly listed securities business, my question to you is, other than top line and bottom line, which I would focus on any industry, what other metrics should I be looking at within the securities business to assess whether this is a well-managed company?
Look, to be honest, what you need is service, right? It's the service industry. And service industry requires that there's no issue of your online being down, so you cannot trade if you want to or get stuck, or the brokers out of exposure. Because every time you put in a bid, forget if it's hit or not, the broker has to put up exposure in cash and securities to guarantee your trade. So you need a broker. That's why we're one of the few, which I think 7 that are listed. So out of the 287. So that tells you automatically we have much more compliance because we're a listed entity. We actually, accounts are available online at any time. So that, in my view, again, the government should encourage the sector that is there, the brokers, the national clearing, the CDC, all parts, the Lahore Stock Exchange, the Samba Stock Exchange, they should all be encouraged to list or forced to list. And that creates liquidity, creates more, another traded stock, and it creates good volume.
That's really good. A sidebar question for you. I don't know if you're familiar with Robinhood or Wealthsimple
Of course,
in
yes.
North America. You are excellent. I'm curious, do you see forays like that, solutions like that making its way into the Pakistan market?
Of course, the future is the future. Right now, it cannot be done because if you are my client, I cannot keep your cash in my account. Robinhoods and all make their money by the float, right? They actually get to keep the cash. You open an account, you trade, but the cash is sitting there. They make money on that. In Pakistan, we are not allowed to keep the individual's cash. It has to be in a separate account called a client account. So we cannot use that cash. The second thing a Robinhood and all can do is your securities they can use and pledge, and they can short and they lend. Pakistan, again, that's not allowed because the securities as in the Roshan account is not with me. I don't even have access to it, so I cannot use it or misuse it. So one, it gives a lot more security to the client because his assets can never be misused. But that's the way the Robinhoods and all make money. So it's not possible under the current regulation.
Okay, thank you for that. We're going to change subjects again, and we're going to go back to something you had earlier spoken about. The buzz in the Pakistan economy in recent times has been the Roshan digital account. What is this account, and why is it such a big deal?
Look, to open an account first as a Pakistani, it was a headache. It's very difficult to open an account because of know your customer. You have to go and give your fingerprints. There's so many issues. So very few people would open accounts. Second thing is, if you're a Canadian or a Pakistani Canadian, you come here once a year, once every 2 years. After 6 months, you haven't used your account. Guess what? It gets dormant and you cannot touch it. You can't make a payment out of it. And they say you have to come and sign the forms. Stupid regulations like that. So the Roshan account is the first time they've done this, and I give full credit to the government for this. I think the best thing they've done. They've made it easy for a Pakistani or overseas Pakistani to send money in Pakistan, get a good return, and convenient. You do not have to go and have your accounts or your passport and all attested by the embassy. You can open the account sitting in your desk. That's what people want. I say you don't need tax breaks. You don't need things like that to get people to invest in Pakistan. All you need is to make it convenient. And once you make it convenient, money will come, and it's been proven. I mean, this is what Imran Khan had always said, that overseas Pakistanis will support Pakistan if you let them. They've come up with a way to let them. And it's been proven right. People are talking that 600 million will come in by June 30th.
Wow. Listen, this piece that you mentioned, the audience had to go through the SICRA experience for them to understand the value of a Roshan digital account. I opened my first Pakistan equity trading account in 2018. It was a 6-month process end to end with multiple trips to the embassy here, as well as multiple couriers that I had to send to the brokerage house in Pakistan. Not a pleasant process. And so to Ayaz's point, this has, in my mind, also been revolutionary. Ayaz, now as an overseas Pakistani, other than convenience that you've alluded to, and Roshan Digital takes care of that, 2 other topics come up. The first one is tax, and the second one is repatriation of funds. So let's talk about tax first. If I was to make capital gains or dividends in any given year, how much tax do I pay? How do I pay it?
It's 15% and is deducted. The dividend is deducted as source. Capital gain is also taken out of your account every year.
Nice and simple.
No tax return has to be filed, and you actually just download the sheet which shows you your total taxes paid.
Oh, that's
The
fantastic.
dividend sheet and there's a capital gain sheet that comes in.
Excellent. And then when it comes to holding periods, whether I've held the stock for 1 day or 1 year, does my tax impact differ?
No, 1 minute to for 1 decade is the same now.
Very
the current tax law.
Okay, excellent. And then repatriation of funds. If I'm looking to pull money out of my account, bring it back to my home country, what rules do I need to be aware of?
Same, Roshan, automatic, no approvals needed from state bank, nothing. If it's come into the Roshan, it goes out with no questions asked, no approvals needed. You can do it online.
Okay, excellent. Very good answers. Those are exactly what we're looking for. You spoke about domestic investors. How has the onboarding process for domestic investors been? Has that changed and evolved over the last few months or years?
They're trying to make it easier. A lot of people are saying it should be as easy as the Roshan account to open a brokerage account. So they're working on that, and they will do it in the next week or so. And as I said, if you look at the volume that is being traded by overseas Pakistanis, as a percentage, it used to be less than 1%. Now it's about 4% already since the Roshans have started. In my view, it'll go to 10%.
Okay, staggering numbers and very optimistic numbers for Pakistan. But this level of conversation that I'm having with you really culminates into my next question. And the context is this. If you look at the stock market penetration in Pakistan, it is shockingly low. And so I believe the numbers are we have, prior to Roshan, we had about 250, 300,000 active equity investors in Pakistan, with a population in this country of more than 200 million people. So our stock market penetration was about 0.1, 0.2%. Now, not only is that low, Ayaz, from an absolute standpoint, it's even low from a relative standpoint. If I was to look at neighboring economies like Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, if I was to look at early emerging economies like Vietnam, we're at the bottom of this list. Why are we so low?
SECP, simple. The regulator has failed completely, does not understand, harasses the investor before. This government is changing the mindset. Before, it actually, the reputation, the brokers were looked at bad, manipulators, and not encouraged to give you your money there. Now they made it safer. They should actually encourage you, because the broker can't run away with your money. He doesn't have access to it. You get, by the way, if you are trading online, you get an email from National Clearing, you get an email from CDC, and you get an email from the broker. So the three people, any security that moves from your account or comes in, there's three actual independent entities that tell you about it. And the law is dividend also cannot be stolen, because dividend has to be credited directly into your account. No checks, nothing can be given. It goes through RTGS. The second thing is, even the broker is not allowed to make payment. For a Roshan account is automatically paid to CDC, but as an individual Pakistani client, the broker can only make payment to you through cross-check with your CNIC number on it. So no one can steal money out of your account now.
And maybe you've already answered this, but how do we bring this stock market penetration number up?
As I said, if you make it easier, people will come. The other thing is, you have to realize people are greedy. If they see money being made, they will come. And when IPOs are the best way to encourage new people to come in, because before you could actually do an IPO and take shares in physical form. Now that has been banned. So if you want to participate in an IPO, you actually have to have a CDC account and a brokerage account. And I'll give you a simple example. Yesterday, the results came out. Endro Polymer issued preferred shares, giving KIBOR plus 3.5%. It was oversubscribed almost 6 times. Wow. So if you applied for 6,000 shares, you would have got 1,000. So people see that, they see the success, then they come in. As I told you, organic meat has given a return in less than 6 months of 50%. People see that, they will come. So if IPOs start and people see every IPO is generating a profit, accounts will come.
This conversation has been moving forward quite quickly, and you've been giving us lots of nuggets that I'm making notes of, and I'm sure audience would be trying to understand as well. As we wrap up this conversation, I'm going to ask you to put on your financial analyst hat. And that hat is beginning of 2020, we went through a global economic shock in the form of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm going to ask you which industries in Pakistan were hardest hit as a result of this pandemic, but then also perhaps more important, which sectors or companies have the most opportunities in this recovery cycle?
Well, as you saw, the whole world shut down in March, April. So a lot of factories had zero production. Car manufacturers had zero production. There were, even the IT industry in Sindh was shut down. So there has been a pent-up demand from that, but there was a big hit to the economy, and people actually had no idea how it would recover, how bad this pandemic would be. But sitting 6 months after, but we're in the second wave, and we now have a so-called cure that is being administered. But Pakistan, I think, was a net beneficiary. We've been very lucky. And the first reason is our biggest import is oil. And our biggest effect on inflation is oil. So when oil prices went down, our current account has been in surplus 5 out of the last 6 months. I believe December will be another current account surplus. This has never happened, I think, in the last ever in Pakistani history. So your oil imports went down. Therefore, it allowed the government to reduce prices and reduce inflation. The second thing that happened is, thanks to Bangalore being shut and thanks to every place being shut except Lahore, they kept open, the IT industry has been the biggest beneficiary. People who used to say never Pakistan because of the risk perception, and they used to only go to India, all have started coming to Pakistan, maybe giving us 5% or 10% of the business. But that 5% of the business we can't handle yet. Pakistan Tobacco announced they have their BPO office in Malaysia, that they're opening their second BPO office in Pakistan. One of our biggest exporters is actually Moody's, which has the ratings. They're all done in Islamabad. So, and there's a company that is a wholly owned subsidiary of Ernst & Young called Rapid Innovation. They are hiring accountants and they're doing outsourcing of chartered accountancy from the Middle East and South Africa in Pakistan. In my view, in the next 5 years, they'll probably be the largest employer of chartered accountants. So there is a lot of this happening. No one even knows because they're not listed. They're all under the radar, but it is growing dramatically. So that's been a big beneficiary. The other thing that's happened is the cement industry and the steel industry, because there's a mini boom. The government actually, to create jobs and protect the economy, gave a tax amnesty scheme for construction. So we've actually had last 2 months of record cement sales. So what was looking 6 months ago as there's going to be overcapacity, all these companies are highly leveraged, all these companies will need debt relief, has suddenly become everyone, let's look at expansion again, because we're at 100% capacity, we can't produce more. The other thing was, for 3 months, there were no cars produced, or 2 months at least. Today, again, with Kia coming in and Nishat coming in, you have a wait of 6 months for a car, which you don't have in America or Canada. So we go from, we need a very little bit to create a boom in this economy. And the other thing that the government has done, they've changed their focus to export-led. And they are promoting exports because they want a current account surplus. And again, as I said, the tire plants are coming. Another thing is, all the textile companies are working at 100%. They're all booked till June next year. There's no one can take any orders. They're all expanding. And the government has a very good scheme, and that is called TURF, where they will give you a loan at, I think the bank gets it at 5%, and they can lend it onward to you at 7% in rupees for 10 years for any equipment. So this big uncertainty used to be, if I expand today, interest rates go up to 15%, I'm dead. Suddenly they've guaranteed that interest rate for 10 years and created a mini boom in textile machinery especially. And every day you will see rights are being announced. Every company is expanding. This has not happened in the last 10 years, that's for sure.
Excellent information, lots of information and rapid fire. So thank you for that. I'm going to end by saying to the audience that I will have in the show notes contact information for Dawood Equities so that they'll know how to reach out to you. But I'll just ask you, because you've taken time out, I'd love for you to explain to our audience right at the end the value proposition with Dawood Equities. You mentioned convenience offering. that separates different securities brokerages. Talk to us about Dawood Equities and how audiences can reach out to you to start their equity trading account with you.
I would recommend as an overseas Pakistani or an American, you should use Roshan. If you do Roshan, you open an account with any of the 6 banks, then you can do any of the brokers. Our brokerage is listed. It has been listed for, I think, about 15 years now, 2007, 13 years. And we are a profitable brokerage, and we do not have issues with you getting stuck on exposure ever, as well as the fact is, if you have any issues, you can call me or Altamash.